Religion in England, beginning with the Celts to 1400. Religion of the Celts. Druidism. Druidism is a modern spiritual or religious movement. The people that participate in these actions are called Druids. Druidism helps us to find who we are as individuals, sharing a common founding myth, and it helps us to be connected with the world around us to position ourselves. It does not separate us from others, but enables us to assume our difference within this world, said by the founder of the ADCS. It is said that the Druids controlled the humans and the gods. They had something called the Bronze Calendar. The Bronze Calendar had the lucky days and the unlucky days listed on it. The Druids were very tough warriors. It took them 20 years to train. Everything they learned was by word of mouth. They had nothing written down. They had to memorize it all by heart. Human sacrifices were made to please the gods. The victims of the sacrifices usually volunteered because they had no fear of death. Importance of gods and Celtic priests. Mother Nature had a lot to do with the Celtic beliefs. The Druids performed human sacrifice for the gods. They had over 200 gods and goddesses. They were not afraid of death, so most human sacrifices were volunteers. People were killed ritually by crucifixion. They also believed in reincarnation, and with that, when they would bury the dead, they would bury them with weapons, food, and money. Many people avoided the Celts because of their height. This is because they were usually around 6 feet tall, and back then 6 feet tall was very tall. The Celts would decapitate a soldier after they were killed. If the soldier was well known and a good soldier, they would preserve the head. But if the soldier was not well known or not a good soldier, they would just toss the head aside. The Celtic people would fight naked to show off their muscles and scare off their enemies. They would also have body paint on to please the gods. They used extremely loud war horns to also scare off their enemies. The Celts were taught that war was a competitive sport, and as you may have figured out, they were not very unified people. The Inquisition. The Inquisition was a disciplinary effort started by the Church, specifically the Catholic Church. This was started in 1231 AD and continued on for centuries. Large numbers of people were burned during this time, and hundreds of thousands of others had less severe punishments. Jews, Protestants, and non-believers are the main ones that were targeted. The Inquisition opened the door to a more modern world. It also made laws become more clear on what is acceptable and what is not acceptable. This time is when the world changed from medieval to modern. Church and the state. In the 13th century, the church had very great power. The church controlled the lives of people. There was a new building style during these times, and it was called Gothic. This style was devised by a young man named Abat Sugar. Many windows were put in the church to let in the light of God. Around this time is when the Black Death started. The people believed that the Black Death was a punishment sent from God. They were told to stay in their houses and not to leave. They later found out that the disease was being spread by fleas that were on the mice and rats. Now we are going to watch a segment from the video Hershey War and the Black Death.
But almost everyone agreed the plague was a punishment from God.
A lot of moralists in Europe immediately after the Black Death inevitably commented that the plague was a kind of judgment from God on a corrupt people. And there were all kinds of explanations as to why that corruption might have come about and why that judgment was necessary upon them. The corruption of the papacy could be seen as one of the reasons for this. But generally speaking, what the commentators of the time, the chroniclers, the polemicists, and so on, tended to emphasize was a kind of general moral decadence within society at large, and to comment that until people actually made penance for their sins, then this great scourge would not be lifted.
I don't think anyone doubted that the Black Death was the direct intervention of God on earth, that this was God's wrath striking a guilty, a sinful people. What they didn't know was what the sin was and why God was striking him so forcibly and so comprehensively. The clergy said that it was all the laity's fault for being so avaricious and so lecherous, and the laity said it was all the cleric's fault for being so decadent and self-indulgent.
Translation of the Bible to English. John Wycliffe translated the Bible to English. By 1380, he had translated most of it from Latin to English. However, he never finished until the early 1400s.